We are live. It had a countdown and it said it's time to go live, so actually I had to push the button. There are 59 people watching. Now we're down to 44.
Okay, people can start to come forward together. So if you see some front, you'd like to be punctual, get started on time, end on time. So everybody can come forward. Appreciate it. I know how much everybody is excited to be together and see one another. It's why you're here. All right, so okay, let's get started. Why did I get this fun job of getting everybody to be quiet? All right, thank you everybody for being here. Really, it's good afternoon. Thanks for coming out and joining us under the tent as we stand together in solidarity with one another against rising anti-Semitism and hate. Also, a warm welcome to those of you who are tuning in virtually from home. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm the CEO of Mayerson JCC. We are humbled to host this important gathering here at the J. And while COVID has challenged us to think a little differently about how we bring community together in person, it seems that fitting that today is really the first coming together and we're doing it under the tent. A symbol of welcoming, a symbol of openness, a symbol that celebrates the richness and breadth and diversity of our community. As we celebrate together also LGBTQ Pride Month, we're reminded that we are stronger, better community, not in spite of, but because of our differences. I'd like to thank the other convening organizations who helped plan today's event. The Jewish Federation and its JCRC, Jewish Community Relations Council, the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center, ISH, and the Greater Cincinnati Board of Rabbis. I'd also like to extend our gratitude to all the supporters of today's event. More than 30 organizations in our community, the Jewish community, are a part of today's event. You can see them listed in the signs at the entrance. I'd also like to have a warm, heartfelt welcome to those of our civic leaders, friends, and allies who made it here today to stand with us. At this time, I'd like to welcome all of our community rabbis who are here with us today to come to the stage and join Rabbi Karen Tomashaw, who will offer some remarks on behalf of the Greater Cincinnati Board of Rabbis, one of the rabbinic bodies in our community. Thank you, and take care.
Once again, just want to make sure that I invite all of my colleagues, rabbis who are present here today to come up here. Thank you, Mark, for your introduction. Thank you to my colleagues who stand with me today, both here in the tent and virtually online. And good afternoon to everyone. It is a good afternoon because after a year and a quarter of the pandemic, this is the first gathering of this size of our community. The Torah records, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. How good are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. This passage is typically sung for the beginning of a Jewish worship service, because historically the Israelite people gathered in the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting, and there engaged in rituals of holiness. It is both holy and special that we gather in this tent of meeting this afternoon, and not only because we haven't gathered in quite some time, but also because our gathering signifies the strength of our resolve in the face of a recent uptick in anti-Semitism in our country. We will hear multiple voices and diverse perspectives this afternoon, and still we stand together as a united community. Interestingly, the phrase, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, how good are your tents, Jacob, is attributed in the Bible to the prophet Balaam, hired by King Balak of Moab to lay a curse upon the Israelites. But instead of cursing the Israelites, as Balaam stood on an embankment and gazed out upon the tents of our ancestors, he blesses them. And he does so by also saying that we, the Israelites, are like gardens beside a river and cedars beside the water. Our roots have abundant water. This is the imagery I would like to embrace at this time. That of trees whose strength is more enduring than the storms we weather. From conflict in the land of Israel to hatred here in America. As a community, when we gather together under one tent and stand strong in the face of hatred, I believe that we turn this modern curse or disgrace into a blessing. Our community is a blessing. Judaism is a blessing, and those who care about the Jewish community and are counted amongst our friends and allies are too a blessing. As we learn of personal examples of anti-Semitic acts over the past few weeks, we are reminded that ill will towards one Jewish person is animus towards us all. At this time, we are also reminded that anti-Semitism typically flourishes in an atmosphere of intolerance. The disdain of Jews grows alongside other hatreds: racism, homophobia, transphobia, and Islamophobia, to name only a few. If one minority group is threatened, we are all threatened. We shouldn't feel abashed about naming intolerance in general, or anti-Semitism in particular when we see it. As we gather today as a strong community of Jews and friends and neighbors, how might we equip ourselves to combat anti-Semitism? By calling anti-Semitism out wherever it comes and from whomever it comes from. We need not minimalize it or rationalize it. By keeping anti-Semitism in perspective, it is real, it is persistent, and it is pronounced. But the challenge we face is to be vigilant and not fearful. Our Jewish tradition teaches us to not be fearful, not only for the sake of others, as much as it is for our own sake, that we don't let fear distort who we are. We don't need isolation at this time, nor distrust of others, but rather strength, compassion, camaraderie, community, interest in the world around us, and hope. I'd like to conclude my remarks with the beautiful words of a colleague, Rabbi David Stern. He wrote, "We are not Jews because of anti-Semitism. We are not Jews because of Hitler or despite him. We are Jews because of Torah, because of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, because of justice and compassion and human dignity, because of history and song, because of tzedakah and Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah, and because of the kugel and the arguments that await us at our holiday tables." Amen.
Rabbi Thomas Shaw, for his work, beautiful remarks. Thank you for that reflection. On behalf of all of us, I want to thank all of our community's rabbis here today for your leadership during this difficult time for our community. My name is Gary Greenberg, and I'm a past president of both the Jewish Federation of Cincinnati and the Jewish Community Relations Council. We're here today under the tent in the parking lot of our Jewish Community Center, the heart of our community, to join together as Jews and allies and to send a strong message that we will not tolerate hate and anti-Semitism in any form. Sadly, we are witnessing a disturbing and dramatic rise in anti-Semitism. Violent attacks against Jews in broad daylight in cities across America, including, unfortunately, here in Cincinnati. The Anti-Defamation League, which monitors incidents of hate and extremism, tracked a 75% increase in just the last few weeks. Dehumanizing and incendiary rhetoric, such as "kill all Jews" and "Hitler was right," has exploded on social media and in person, leading to real violence against everyday people going about their everyday lives simply because they're Jewish. Across the country, we've seen people hurling bottles and objects in homes that were identifiably Jewish, and synagogues set on fire and vandalized. We've seen people driving through Jewish neighborhoods and yelling anti-Jewish slurs, and Jewish Americans beaten within an inch of their lives. Right here in Cincinnati, a university student was assaulted simply because there was Hebrew written on his shirt. Others have been harassed for speaking up against rhetoric and imagery that crossed the line from fair criticism of Israeli policy into anti-Semitism by blatantly lying about Israel's actions and denying Israel's right to exist. While it is certainly okay for us to disagree with particular positions, policies, or actions of the Israeli government, as many Israelis often do, we must also have zero tolerance for anti-Semitism, just as we should have zero tolerance for any other form of bigotry. We should continue to move through these volatile and divisive times with vigilance. Not fear, as our rabbi advised us, but vigilance. Our Jewish Community Relations Council is here to be a resource for our community in addressing issues of anti-Semitism and hate. If any of you have been targeted in any way by hate or anti-Semitism, or have seen or heard others targeted, I encourage you to reach out to our JCRC for support so that we can be sure these incidents are reported to appropriate authorities and dealt with swiftly and effectively. In collaboration with the Nancy and David War Holocaust Humanity Center, our JCRC also offers training and educational resources to help diverse groups better understand and combat anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred. It's been a year and a quarter since we've been together as a community in person. So while we gather together today for the purpose of raising awareness about the disturbing rise in anti-Semitism, I hope that we can also use this time to look around and be reminded that we are not alone in this challenging moment. First, look at the breadth of Jewish diversity under this tent. Young and old, religious and secular, reform, conservative, humanistic, orthodox. Now, while this challenging time is what brings us together today, it is not what defines us as the Jewish people. We are a strong, proud people, bound by common tradition and values and a shared destiny. We will respond to this moment as we have throughout the many seasons of adversity across the long arc of Jewish history by doubling down proudly on our Jewish identity and our Jewish community. Now, we are also humbled to be joined today by our friends and allies across the community, and I want to thank several of these individuals who have come here today to be with us at this moment. The Reverend Paul Booth Jr. of the Legacy Point Church, who will be speaking to us in a few minutes. State Representative Richard Kelly, Leo Chan, Midwest Chinese Chamber of Commerce, Mayor John Cranley, who also will be speaking to us, County Commissioner Denise Freehouse, Kay Geiger, Regional President of PNC Bank, Chip Herod of the Equation and Festival of Faiths, the Reverend Bob Shaughnessy, Dr. Bill Marges of the Savior's Ordinance Center for Flagblock, Interfaith Leaders Group and Jan Seidel, Cincinnati City Council candidate Ethan Owens, State Representative Catherine Ingram. And I hope I've covered all of our elected leaders and clergy who've been here today, a group of elected leaders and clergy from diverse faith traditions, as well as business and civic leaders who are joining us in person and online, because they are committed to the work of combating hate and anti-Semitism. And on behalf of the Jewish community, I want each of you to know how grateful we are that you've taken time to stand with us today. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Our appreciation is genuine. You, our friends and partners, you understand that these vile and violent expressions of anti-Semitism are not just a threat to Jews, but they are a threat to us all and to the free and pluralistic democratic society that we share. And to quote the prominent progressive Rabbi Sharon Brous, you can't fight racism but excuse anti-Semitism, just as you cannot fight anti-Semitism while excusing and justifying racism or Islamophobia. So thank you to those with us today. Your solidarity and support are a welcome source of light during dark and difficult times. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley to the podium to offer a few remarks. And Mayor Cranley, thank you very, very much for being with us here.
I'm not there for I really would appreciate people in the back being quiet. We'll have plenty of time afterwards to schmooze with each other. But right now, please be quiet so people can hear and want to listen. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It is a huge honor to be here. You know, I am reminded every day of the incredible contributions of the Jewish community in Cincinnati because the most beautiful Plum Street Temple is directly across the street from my office. A tremendous piece of architecture and worship. Rabbi Cameron is a friend, and his son and I work together daily. And it is a huge honor to have these incredible icons right next to each other. I think it's very symbolic about the history of the city. You know, Cincinnati has 7 mayors that have been Jewish, more than any other major American city in America. Let's give that a round of applause. And being the home of Reform Judaism and Hebrew Union College is a feather in our cap and an opportunity for Cincinnati to speak to the world very proudly. I'm glad to be with Commissioner Driehaus and Representative Kelly and Ingram and the other elected officials that are here. Let me just say a few things. Let me start with the bad news. These are really scary times. You know, when I got into politics 20 years ago, I thought the biggest issue was that one side wants to do a little bit more for people through government, the other side wants to do a little less. Now we're debating the entire question of truth, the rule of law, whether democracy will survive, whether people can admit simple things like who won an election. And yes, thank you. And these things, as we know, become really, really important. When we've seen mass persecutions, religious mass persecutions historically and genocides, there have always been a couple of things in common. Usually there's been great inequality, great demographic shift, and new media. It was after the printing press that the religious wars of Europe committed multiple genocides. It was with the advent of radio and the inequality coming out of the Great Depression that we all know what happened in the 30s and 40s. And today, once again, we're having huge demographic shifts with refugee crises all over the world, historic inequality higher than the Gilded Age, and now social media that spreads things like QAnon as if it's fact. These are definitely scary times. And just to add a little bit even more bad news, this isn't just unique to America, it's happening all over the world. The anti-Semitism that we saw in Charlottesville a couple years ago, we can hear in the leaders of Hungary. We can hear from the leadership in Brazil. These right-wing populist autocrats are rising everywhere around the world. And to be fair, this is not limited to the right wing. There is also clearly growing anti-Semitism on the left. So this is a left and a right cancer that must be rooted out. And I hate to say it, but I believe that the next 10 years and 20 years will be definitive, not just for our country, but for the world, as to whether liberalism, lowercase l, pluralism, the rule of law, free speech, free religion can survive. And I believe we will, and I believe America will lead the way again. But it's going to require all of us to do our part and to have the courage to stand up to the extremes. If you're like me in the party that leans a little bit more to the left, stand up to your extremism. If you're a member of the party that leans to the right, stand up to your extremists. In all cases, tell the truth. And we have got to also reinvigorate those institutions, like the institutions that came together today, that Tocqueville talked about, that made America so special. The voluntary associations, like being here at the Mayerson, JCC, the JCRC, the Jewish Federation, ISH, and the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center, just to name a few. Because it matters. Social pressure matters, especially in an environment, social media, where lies are spread faster than the truth. You know, this country, as imperfect as it is, was able to help the world to stop the Nazis. And I believe that this country, once again, can lead to the future. And let me just end with some hope. Only in America, in the midst of this chaos, where right-wing populism is rising around the world, could a black man and a Jew be elected to the United States Senate from the old cradle of the Confederacy in Georgia. That is the reason for hope, because America, more than any other place in the world, allows itself to reinvent itself. And we get challenged to do the wrong thing over and over again, and occasionally we take the wrong road. But now is the time for us to stand up and not give up on any community, any state, any city, but to stand together, stand against anti-Semitism, and for all human rights. Thank you very much.
Eric Cranley, thank you so much for standing with the Jewish community of Cincinnati in solidarity at this time where we're facing this disturbing surge in anti-Semitism. You being here today means a lot to all of us. Good afternoon, my friends. I'm Dave Wise. I'm the board chair of the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center. And just as Gary and other community leaders have just shared, I am, and I know that all of you share this feeling, are deeply concerned. We're deeply disturbed, frustrated, angry about the rise of anti-Semitic violence, rhetoric, and incidents carried out, not just nationwide, but here in our own community. We as Jews, we know the dangers of unchecked hate. The consequences of it are dire and they're imminent. This Holocaust survivor, Dr. Al Miller, has said, and I'll quote him, "Words are often more powerful than guns. Words are used so easily to mock, to humiliate, to incite, to attack, to demonize. That is precisely how the Holocaust started, and we all know how it ended." At the Holocaust Center, we engage with hundreds of thousands of people every year with one singular purpose: to ensure that the lessons of the Holocaust inspire action today. And all too often, and in particular in recent weeks and months, it sure can feel like far too many individuals have not learned from one of the darkest chapters in history. However, while we do, as a community, collectively grapple with the pains and angst and frustration that comes along with these expressions of hate and anti-Semitism, my hope is that you will share some of my optimism. That hope is definitely not lost. And in part, because as Al Miller said, words do have power, and we can use them to affect change. And together with our allies across the community, These people who share our values and our commitment to humanity, each and every one of us can be an upstander and make change in this community, in the world, in this moment, and it's needed. One obvious way that we can do this is through Holocaust education. Education that actually inspires. Education that encourages us and others to be upstanders and use our voices to encourage people to please learn from the past. We know that in a recent survey found that college students who were exposed to Holocaust education in high school showed higher critical thinking and a greater sense of social responsibility along with increased empathy and tolerance. We can do that. We have the opportunity and arguably the responsibility to create future generations that value inclusivity and diversity. Even here locally, 96% of surveyed individuals said that they felt an obligation to stand up to hate and anti-Semitism after attending a program hosted at the Holocaust Center. We all know ignorance is at the root of it all, and knowledge can break down bigotry and hate. And most importantly, we have got to, we must work together with our allies, not just to combat anti-Semitism, but against racism, against xenophobia, against all forms of hate. Because we know that anti-Semitism cannot be stopped until all forms of hatred are eradicated. The support of our friends and our allies here today is a testament to the fact that we are all stronger together. And to those friends and allies, as Gary said, know this. You being here today does not go unnoticed. We thank you. We thank you. Now I'd like to introduce my friend, Pastor Paul Booth Jr., who serves as congregational leader at Legacy Point Church, and also is a member of the Board of Directors of the Holocaust and Humanities Center. Paul, thanks so much for being here.
Good afternoon to those here under this sacred tent and those online. I am honored to stand here today as an ally, as a board member of the Holocaust and Humanities Center, and a friend. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the drum major for justice, made it clear. He said that we are bound together in one inextricable garment of destiny. And as we stand together today under this tent, we are standing as a sign and as a symbol that our destinies are bound together. In the Hebrew scripture, we are reminded of the story about the Israelites. We know that the Israelites faced a great hand of hate and challenge from an oppressive Pharaoh. But we know that God sent a great prophet by the name of Moses, who went and told Pharaoh, "Let my people go." Now, as we stand here today as allies and friends against hate and against anti-Semitism, we are here today to stand and let Pharaoh know to let my people go. The great author, professor, Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel, he made this declaration. He said that the opposite of hate is not love, it's indifference. So as we stand here together under this sacred tent, we are here to make a statement that we will not be indifferent, not on our watch, against hate and anti-Semitism. We're here to let those opposers know and those who lack knowledge about the beauty of diversity, that we will not be indifferent, but that we will be drum majors for justice. We are here because of our children, to raise up a generation that understands the importance and the value of the humanity found in each other. As I close, I want to challenge our city. Cincinnati has not lived up to its name. We're truly a city of freedom. Because when you look at where Cincinnati is geographically, I'm reminded that it is a gateway to freedom. My ancestors ventured their way to freedom, leaving the Old South, crossing the Ohio River. And this city, which was one of the gateways, the Underground Railroads, led them to freedom. And so right here under this tent, we have a charge as a city to be that city that is the gateway to freedom. Yes, we're a gateway city. And it's time for us to embrace that identity. It is time for us to make a social contract that says it doesn't matter who's in office, but we are a city that is too busy to hate because we recognize and we see the humanity in each other. And we create policies, we create culture in this city to make sure that there is access for all. And then most importantly, racism, hate, and anti-Semitism will not live in this city because we will run it out of this city with the mighty hand of God. As I take my seat, I'm honored to introduce Holocaust survivor, Zahava Brenda. Let's give her a hand.
I am Rabbis Fire in Holocaust. Can you hear me? I am Zahava Firework Ranger, a Holocaust survivor. My name and religion were taken away from me. I was hunted like an animal, forced into hiding, separated from my parents and sister, but I survived. I was just a baby, 10 months old, when my family and I went into hiding in an underground bunker. I started my life in darkness, constant cold and silence. People were only able to speak in whispers. I was giving sleeping pills that I would not cry and reveal our hiding place. Under the terrible circumstances and constant threat of being discovered, my parents made the excruciating decision to place me in hiding elsewhere. I survived because of non-Jewish Catholic people who risked their own lives to save me and my family, as well as 30 other people who remained hidden in an underground bunker. I was placed at a convent where many other Jewish children were kept safe by the sisters. The outside world brought the shrill sounds of bombs and war, but on the inside of the convent, the sisters would encourage us to sing to drown out the sounds of the bombs. At that time, I thought this was a game, and did not understand the world. It was much later, as an adult, I realized this had been prayers, not a game, that involved me crossing myself. It was then I truly understood what had been taken away from me, my identity as a Jew. But it also taught me that God is everywhere. And after my family emerged from hiding, I began to learn for the first time who I am. My Jewish identity was further strengthened when we moved to Israel, where I grew up and was taught to hold my head very high and be a proud Jew. And now, with rising antisemitism around the world, I'm not afraid. I'm not a victim anymore and will not be one. When antisemitism increases, we tend to hide, but I will not hide again. I will be an upstander, not a bystander. With the world condemning Israel, how will we respond? With synagogues are burned, how will we respond? When people sitting at a kosher restaurant are murdered, how will we respond? These attacks happen to make us fear being who we are. We should not fear our identity. Instead, we should be more Jewish. Do not hide. There is no question. We must respond. Like Isaiah, also a Holocaust survivor, once said, silence helps the tormentor, not the tormentee. We need to be a strong voice. We need to be more vigilant. We must create security and be security for one another. We need to be strong, united. I have been a teacher for over 50 years now. I did not have a childhood, but my mission has been to teach children our heritage and be proud Jews. The people of Israel live. Am Israel Chai. Rabbi Akiva said, "Ve'ahavta lereacha kamocha." Love thy neighbor as you love thyself. The only way to live this way is to live by example of this statement to others. Not only do our children need to learn this lesson, we must remember this very important lesson and be an example to others. We must respect each other and show love to other races, religions, and cultures, and they believe us well. Am Israel Chai.
My name is Ezra Goldschmidt. I'm a rabbi at Congregation Sha'arei Torah, and I'm incredibly thankful for all of you for coming out today, to the many organizations, sponsors, and allies that made today happen. Thank you very much. Just yesterday, we read the Torah portion of Korach, an episode of the Jewish story in which some agitators almost tear us apart, in which a coalition of strange bedfellows built on hate almost succeeded in turning us against each other. We as a people standing here today have learned the lesson of that episode. Today we stand in defiance of those who would tear us apart. We stand united against Jew hatred and in support of Jewish people all over. For so many reasons, it should be clear and easy for us to stand together. There are so many layers upon layers of injustice when it comes to the Jewish experience, what we as a people have had to face, particularly over the past few months. Layer one, no one, Jew or non-Jew, should ever experience violence or threats based on what they think and believe. This is so obvious and fundamental to our world, to our humanity, that it shouldn't need elaboration, but apparently it does. One example, on May 19th, in broad daylight, a mob of at least a dozen people attacked a Jew in Manhattan for displaying an Israeli flag and not letting them take it away from them. If not for a police presence, the incident could have turned even uglier because of wicked people who hate free speech. Again, no one, Jew or non-Jew, should ever experience violence or threats based on what they think and believe. Layer two. No one should ever experience violence or threats for being a Jew, with attackers employing violence based on assumptions about what a Jew does or believes. Also that same day, May 19th, in Los Angeles this time, a group of masked men hopped out of a car and into a kosher sushi place, asking, "Who is a Jew?" They then proceeded to assault anyone who was willing to admit to this crime. We all know that if you ask two Jews a question, you'll get three opinions. We're a diverse bunch of people, and it's absurd to resort to violence based on what Jews think and believe, but it's even more absurd when those people think they know what a Jew thinks and believes. To those that hate us, you don't even know us. How dare you? These are important points to make, but let's not let them be the only truths that we share today. There's a third layer, and it's the most important one to remind ourselves about when that feeling of loneliness sets in. On the granular details, we as a people are all over the place, politically, philosophically, religiously, you name it. But we do have certain ideas to rally around. We have a shared moral core. When it comes to the flashpoint of all of this, what has created this surge in anti-Semitism? It's the matzav, it's the situation in Israel. And when it comes to what Israel has gone through in the past month or so, we should be proud that we have moral clarity on what has happened. We have nothing to be ashamed of that Jews in Israel defend themselves. I know there are children here, this is somewhat of a family event, I don't want to get too explicit. I could describe Hamas and their tactics even more graphically than I'm about to, and it would all be horrifyingly true. But this will have to suffice. Hamas wants every Jew dead. They don't hide that, they're not shy about it, it's explicit in their charter. When Hamas sends rockets indiscriminately targeting civilians, young and old, to terrorize an entire country, when they spend foreign aid to build tunnels for kidnapping and killing innocent people, when they commit crimes against humanity by violently targeting members of the LGBTQ community and many others, when they put their own people in danger by doing all of this from hospitals, schools, and homes because they just hate Jews that much, there's no gray here. That's an evil that is so easy for us to recognize, and Israel's morality, its restraint in response, is so clear to anyone willing to pay attention. We can and should be proud of our brothers and sisters in Israel. Those who ignore Hamas's atrocities could not be more wrong. We can and must hold our heads up high. We should be proud of who we are. We can always be better, of course, we're not perfect, but let's never let that obscure that the cause of our peoplehood is just, and we won't let anyone tell us otherwise. We are proud Jews, we stand united, and we stand on the side of morality. Thank you.
Hello, check, check. Thank you, Rabbi, and to all of our esteemed guests and speakers, and for all of you joining us today. Let's give all of us a round of applause for coming out and to be together. It strikes me looking around this tent, and for those who couldn't make it here today, our community is strong because of our diversity. And our community is strong because of the way that we connect across divides, across Jewish identity and non-Jewish identity to come together in times of need. So thank you again for being here. This will be our closing song. We welcome you, invite you to join us. O Yavo Shalom Aleinu, peace will come upon us. I am standing next to amazing young people from our community, Maya Jaffe, Morgan Evans, and Michael Danziger. I am your co-coach Brown. I am the executive and artistic director for ISH. And please join us in this closing song. Shalom Aleinu, Shalom Aleinu, Shalom Aleinu, Shalom Aleinu,
How you doing? Fantastic. Good. That's crazy, man. You probably weren't even born. Like with a porta pack, you carry a 3/4 wrench slung around with a battery belt, with a big like Ikegami like 340. You know? How long ago was that? What? How long ago was that? The 80s. 80s? Yeah. The 80s. Before I was born. Yeah. A lot of them to the 90s. In fact, I have a CP16 sitting there. My really good friend, when he shot movies when they shot on film, and he gave me his old camera. Yeah, we have to go in and develop. It was like, instead of videotape, it was a projector and like rolling film behind it. Yeah, people would get burned or electrocuted from the film. There's that much current. The guy that I used to live with, and I celebrated his 46th anniversary. All right, I'm gonna get out of here. Okay. I'm gonna pull my stuff out. Go do things for my system. I think that'd be good for a couple of meetings this week.